today's Nexus Seminar. The Nexus Seminar today is co-hosted by UNU-FLORES, the United Nations University Institute for Integrated Management of Material Fluxes and of Resources. And this is done together with the Dresden University of Technology, in particular PRISMA, which is the Center for Sustainability Assessment and Policy. Prof. Samanthi Dijkstra-Silva is the Karlowitz Junior Professor for Sustainability Assessment and Policy, and she represents TU Dresden and PRISMA here today. My name is Serena Coetzee, and I'm from UNU-FLORES, where I'm responsible for everything related to education, which is presented under the umbrella of the Knowledge Academy for the Resource Nexus, CARE, and I'm very happy to welcome all of you here today. Also today with us is Johanna Schepling. She is from UNU-FLORES. She hides behind that UNU-FLORES Zoom that you're seeing, and she will help us today with technical support. Some background about the Nexus Seminar. The series was established in 2015 and features speakers, usually senior researchers, on the topics of sustainability and the resource nexus. That means the integrated management of environmental resources so that synergies and trade-offs can be identified and leveraged. Apart from the public audience, we also have students in the lecture today. They have to complete a learning diary about the Nexus Seminar lectures held in this semester. And they then have to answer questions like, what are the 3 main insights? How can you and your discipline contribute to the topic? And what did you learn about your own and other disciplinary perspectives on sustainability? Today's seminar is number 84, and I will introduce Dr. Johannes Cullmann in a moment. Before we start, a brief orientation for the participants in today's session. The speaker will start with a presentation of his work, and then if you have questions for the speaker, you can post them in the Q&A section, the question and answer panel. I will then moderate the discussion after the presentation. We will read your questions from the panel and the speaker will answer them. Unfortunately, we organize this like a webinar, so there's no interactive speaking. Should you encounter any technical difficulties, please do not use the Q&A session, but the regular chat function, and then you can write there. And Johanna, who's behind the scenes, will then assist you with your problems. So then, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce to you today Dr. Johannes Cullmann. He's a distinguished German water scientist coordinating sustainability-related research and partnership activities for UNU-FLORES. His extensive career includes work in development cooperation and research in Brazil and Chile, German universities, and leading international roles, such as responsibility for international water cooperation at the German Federal Institute for Hydrology, the president of UNESCO's Water Program, senior director for Water and Climate at the WMO, and chief scientist supporting the president of the UN General Assembly and vice chair of UN Water. He currently also contributes to the German Federal Water Agency and the Institute for Water Education in Delft. So with that long list of experience, we are really looking forward to your view on SDGs and indicators and how we can pursue and better measure them in your lecture today. Thank you, Johannes. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Serena, for the long introduction. And I hope you are not now thinking that, so many different jobs, the guy can't do a job for more than 3 years. I hope that's not your impression. So welcome to everybody. I've never done a seminar in this format here with UNU, but I understood that some of you might be interested in getting a view on indicators that we're using to measure the Sustainable Development Agenda's progress and how that links to externalities, and what some thoughts are maybe, or some food for thought is, to reflect this agenda and where we're going with it. I have a car going in my backyard that makes lots of sounds. Do you hear that?
No, we don't hear it. We don't hear it.
Good. I can't see anybody, so please interrupt me if in case you want to ask any question to the slide I'm at or so. Serena can maybe then just give me a sign. So my first slide here is on the virtual water trade. And so many people think about water efficiency and water resilience everywhere. And then most of the times we are focused on ourselves. So you see here, Germany is dark red because we have a very negative net virtual water balance. So it means we're importing a lot of water. And in Germany, actually, it's more than half of the water that is virtually being, or the overall German people's impact lies more outside the country than inside the country. So we have a just above 50% external water footprint in all our different, what leads to our lifestyle. And you can see here that in other countries it's different. The US is exporting a lot of water, Brazil is, India is astonishingly, and India is because they export a lot of rice. So you see that at the first sight, you might think that if you are dealing with a water indicator like a water footprint, it's always good to look at the local issue, and water is a local issue, but it's only half the story. The other half of the story lies in the wider interconnectedness of things and how the different commodities or the different activities that we engage in interlink. And so this entry slide is just to a little bit set the tone and background. And now, how fast are we with the Sustainable Development Goals? This here is from the Sustainable Development Network report last year, and you can see that overall, we are getting a little better. And if you look at OECD members, it looks okay. But the main message in here is that we are measuring all the indicators for the Sustainable Development Goals, and the progress or the advancement of sustainability seems to be so slow over the last, 9 years, that there is basically no chance to get anywhere by 2030. And we have 231 indicators that are interconnected. So the progress overall is too slow, and we are measuring this progress with the indicators. But I want to come back to the externalities that I mentioned in the first slide, and also to an example, which is this one here. This is about a bus transport system in Bandung. So that's a big city in Indonesia. And you can see here the externalities in or the benefit that you can generate by implementing two variations or two variants of the bus transport system. It's a classical bus system, that's the light blue, and it's a bus system with a high ambition scenario. So they build more speed bus lines and have more separated infrastructure, more buses and stuff. So it's an enhanced bus transport system. And typically you would look at the O&M cost, about the capital investment, the revenues, the retail revenues and stuff like that. If you and maybe today also CO2 emissions and fuel use. But if you want to think about what is the main benefit of the whole thing, it's the time saved of the people in Bandung. So if you see here the monetary value of the time that is saved because the people don't sit in traffic jams, that's the biggest single value that you can get out of investing in public transport system. It's not the fuel use or or the O&M costs for roads or whatnot. So that is the real externality. But of course, that a company cannot put that into a bank account. So we have this issue with the externalities that sometimes our biggest externalities are not a direct financial asset for the company or for the actor that leverages those externalities. On the next slide, I have collected some information on the externalities that lie in artificial intelligence development in Africa over the next couple years, so by 2030. And you can see that there's a lot in natural language processing and machine learning are the two biggest areas where we can create additional benefit. And I think, everybody would agree that in consumer retail and hospitality, that's a big thing, but there's also a very large potential, especially from machine learning in food security. And if we want to leverage those, we need to think how do we finance or how do we plan and implement schemes that support for example, artificial intelligence in the sustainable development context. And at the moment, there is no SDG on AI, or there is a discussion in the UN on artificial intelligence and how to regulate it, but it is not at the moment a discussion that focuses in a positive way. How can we cooperate to leverage this potential for, say, the agriculture, or I don't know, even for disaster risk reduction or early warnings or any other topic. Now, the Sustainable Development Goals are these here. And if we have 231 independent indicators, if you use mathematical combinatorics, you get these 355 trillion interlinkages between the 231 indicators. And what is my message here? I think that by trying to focus on a specific indicator in a sustainable development framework, we will very likely not achieve we run the risk of not achieving an overall benefit, because we have so many different interlinkages with the other indicators in other goals that if we would want to optimize such a system, I think it would take, I don't know, probably 50 years to calculate it for any given point on the planet. So the indicator framework for the Sustainable Development Goals is way too complicated. It's a good political message, and the Sustainable Development Framework was initially negotiated and agreed as a set of targets, as a goal, as an ambition for people to work together in sustainable development. And then the UN realized, okay, but if there is no indicator, how can we measure any progress? And then there was a big interagency expert group on indicator development, and I was part of that group for the German government. That was in 2016, 17, 18, around this time. And then we developed the indicators, but the indicators are in their totality so complex that, it is very hard for me to say that fulfilling all the indicators is a straightforward exercise to become sustainable. Now, now I'm criticizing the Sustainable Development Goals or indicators, but of course, I don't mean to say they're useless. They are politically absolutely needed to get the discussion going and to also motivate the private sector and the public that we have a problem with sustainability. But what I think is additionally needed is a cooperation that is more based on easy to understand and agree on descriptors of sustainability. So as descriptor of sustainability, for example, is the carrying capacity of the planet, the social well-being, the planetary boundaries, and I think we must focus this on economic opportunities and the richness of our natural ecosystems much more than on the indicators that we have in a sustainable development framework. And if we do that, I think we can create new catalyzers for cooperation, and especially in a week where, I don't know, there's yet another war appearing that many people are concerned about. This peace aspect has become even more important, I think. So can we switch from a modus where at the moment we are looking very worried at indicators to a modus where we co-create opportunities to become more sustainable? And to do that, I think we need to focus on the positive decision space that we have. And the positive decision space for me is not investing more money in sustainable development. I think that must be done, but it shouldn't be our main concern. I think our main concern should be what are the solutions that create benefits for contexts. So not trying to fulfill one indicator forcefully, but thinking what are potential opportunities for people to do things differently. And one number that I have from my time in New York, where we commissioned a study on the investment in water infrastructure, and I will talk quite a bit on water in this in this seminar here, because that's I studied hydrology and meteorology, so I feel at home, but we can discuss this, of course, for other applications or contexts later if you want. So of all the public investment into the water sector, and I think we looked at a time of 5 years before 2021. And so the average investment per year, government investment into water solutions or water security, was around $3.2 trillion US. That's not private sector. That's just when a government, I don't know, in Germany, the government spends money on river restoration, then that's the money that we count here. And of those 3.2 trillion, 1/3 has a negative externality. So it means that if we invest $3 trillion, we create a damage somewhere, be that food security or disaster risk preparedness or biodiversity or social health or whatnot, then $1 trillion has a negative. We get a 1 trillion negative impact in our overall account, so to say, sustainability account. And now if we just throw more money at the problem, we also increase. Of course, if we would increase the money, and I hear many people saying, we need to quadruplify or five-foldify the investment now to make SDG 6 happen. But if we do that, we also up the negative impact, maybe not by then 4 or 5 times, but significantly so, because the negative externalities will grow if we just do more of the same. So our question here is really, how do we find the externalities and how can we leverage a benefit from that within a positive decision space. I think that is a key question. De-risking for me has to do a lot with this. So the problem why transformational solutions are, well, seldom implemented if they are found or sought is that the people have no way how to de-risk a change in behavior. And that's the de-risking. That's a Nature communication paper and some figures from the World Bank. So we need $1.7 trillion per year to de-risk the climate stuff. But we have only 500 billion at the moment per year. And we can't even agree on, the climate finance. There's the discussion in Bonn now around climate finance again. And if we look into the Biodiversity Convention, it's the same problem. So I don't think we will be able to de-risk financially if the private sector doesn't do it. And the private sector will only do it if there is a positive decision space for the private sector. So there again, we say in German, the cat bites its own tail, it chases its own tail. We need to think more about the opportunities and less about indicators or restrictions, I think. Now I will give you the example of the indicator 632, because this was the indicator that the working group that I was part of at the time was responsible for. So I had the honor, pleasure, or the misfortune to coordinate the development of this indicator for the UN. And this is how the water quality indicator looks like at the moment. So, of course, in Germany, we are proud that we are in 80% of good water quality indicator. And then we have even better water quality in France, for example, and in China and in Sudan. So we start to think, okay, well, how does this water quality indicator come about? How is it measured and what does it mean? And if we look at the next slide, the water quality indicator has 5 components: oxygen, salinity, nitrogen, phosphorus, and acidification. And those 5 indicators need to be within the national target ranges 80% of the time to have good water quality. So that also means if you take the Elbe River and you flush the whole thing with acidic acid or phosphorus or something for a week, you destroy all life in the river and you destroy all the ecosystems that are related to it. But because it's only a week, the water quality indicator is still green. So, and I use this example not because, again, I want to say we don't need indicators, but I think we are way too much focused on fulfilling indicator greening without thinking about what does it really mean for the system or what does it really mean for the people. And by system, I mean the environment, the earth system, but also our social and our economic systems. If you look at, and this is totally now also again to show you that the water quality indicator is completely unrelated to what happens with water on our planet. This here is the total water storage. Some of you might know this product. So it's the storage in comparison to a reference period, the last 20 years of water on the planet. And where it's greenish, we have more water than normal, and where it's reddish or orange, we have less water than normal. So this here doesn't at all is not interlinked with what we do in a sustainable development agenda and planning. And if you now see here that, for example, the US, which is exporting a lot of water, also has a lot of negative total water storage. And the same is for northern India and parts of Pakistan and the Middle East or Central Asia. Then you can easily see that, yeah, there's more to it than just looking at an indicator. This here is a picture from a report that was done by the WMO. It's a runoff where it's, yeah, this is the, so to say, the surface part of the water cycle. And you can see again that in 2022, many of the river basins had a, yeah, below or normal runoff, and only few river basins, 20%, had a above average runoff. So I think, yeah, 10% more lower than more runoff, or if you compare the 21 to the 34%, I think you see the difference in terms of how many river basins are currently in a low flow situation, which again, you know, is a much better descriptor of water sustainability in the end than, say, the indicator on how many people are connected to a toilet. And please don't misunderstand me here. Again, I also think it's absolutely needed that everybody has access to sanitation, but the overall Earth system health is not reflected by this number. Now, last slide in this regard is this one here. This is from Water Resources Research paper where GRACE is used to look at the depletion of aquifers. And here again, we have another information that's not at all used in the sustainable development measurement context normally. So we have lots of information. This here is, for example, in how many locations are we using purified recycled water for drinking? And this could be a political movement or indicator that, for example, if we could agree that recycled water should be cheaper than the pristine water you take from groundwater, or that water that you take from natural systems, that could be a political trigger to induce a change in the way we think and in the way our businesses plan mid to long-term strategies for using water. And you see here that only in a few places worldwide we actually have this purified recycled water for drinking, and it's typically then in places like Singapore or South Africa has a few, and there is then, yeah, some in Bangalore, for example. In Spain we have some, so it's in the dry places, but it's not in all the other places that we have seen in the last slides where say the groundwater's depleting, or the total water storage goes down, or the river runoff has been, yeah, below normal for many years. So I think there's a lot of possibility and space how we can think about describing sustainable activities, or activities that are more sustainable in a space, like, for example, here the water SDG 6. And yeah, now how do we do this? What could we do to implement this? One possibility here would be, for example, to create a global cooperation on water information. And in the 23 conference, this thing was named the Global Water Information System, where we would have, yeah, more information on more integrated sustainability, not only on the indicators. We could use AI to find externalities and interconnections at the scale. And if it's at scale, normally it's the river basin or the international scale. So that could also then again lead to a more positive cooperation on leveraging these indicators. And of course, and I have put on this slide here also that it must be related to the SDG indicators. So I don't think we need to create anything completely new. But I think, yeah, if we do that in a Creative Commons open community, we can maybe motivate some of the political groups that normally play against each other to, yeah, to support this activity. What we should not be doing, I think, is what is on this slide here. And this is the typical reaction when we have a problem. We talk about it and we create some groups and then we write a paper. I don't think this is how we go forward. We need to look at the overlap of the different systems and activities, and the resource nexus is one. So circularity is one big topic in this regard. Most of the time we are on the left side of this slide here. So we fragment the sustainable development agendas and goals, and then we sub-fragment this into the indicators and we try to resolve them. But then if we are in the right thing, the duplication or the total redundancy, that would be the ideal situation. Then we would address all problems in one go. That we will not be able to do that, I think, but we should, with our mindset, snap more to the middle to find the overlap, the synergies, and the positive externalities that we can highlight or additionally fund. I think that is for me the name of the game. So what are the steps that we need to take? We know that we have now in 2027 another GSDR. That's the report on, that's the sustainability report in the UN. And I think that we can, together with FLORES and other partners, propose something that Edel and I have thought about as a resource nexus impact analyzer. And if we do that, we can find the biggest externalities, or we can start to think about how in some sort of a main component analysis, we find the slack in how we address problems at the moment, either politically or economically or socially. And that could be, it must not only be restricted to things like financial resources or water. It could also be time, it could be space, it could be yeah, human well-being. And then we can support a community that over the next years switches not away from measuring indicators, but switches to focus on leveraging the externalities instead of, yeah, instead of looking at the indicators like a mouse that looks into the cobra's eyes. So the conditions for success, this is my last slide, I think, are we need to be open data and equal access. We need some agreed references, or we need an agreed system how we can evaluate externalities or those sustainability yeah, descriptors like the circularity. We must provide a net positive decision space. And I think if we do that in an open way, we can create the trust that it takes to develop things like that together. Fields of cooperation are just some thoughts. I have talked about most of this here. I don't think I need to repeat this. And so my message today is largely, or in summary, don't focus only on indicators and try to fulfill single indicators. It won't, in my experience, lead to an overall accelerated process. But instead, what are the transformational steps we can find to go towards a more circular overall philosophy, culture, and economic behavior that, to me, will make a much bigger difference than to just try to fix everything with more money. So that's the end of my presentation, and I hope we find some questions in the Q&A box now.
Thank you, Johannes. I liked the mouse looking into the eyes of the cobra, very very visual and very realistic on where we are in some cases with the SDGs. We have a first question here that says, I'll read it to you. You should be able to see it, but let me read it also.
Is it? It's in F here.
Yeah,
Bertie. Okay.
yes. You want to read it?
Yeah, I can read it. If we had Nexus-aligned SDG indicators for e-waste, for example, water pollution, how could they reshape national policies or voluntary standards to promote circular economy and formal sector investment? If we had Nexus-aligned indicators, I think for me, the question is exactly how do we avoid a Nexus-aligned indicators? And now I might shock you a little bit because maybe you are trying to develop a Nexus-aligned indicator. But for me, the question is, can we organize communities that leverage circularity or that leverage the externalities? And can we, through that, create one sole I earlier in my own mind called it the circularity indicator, but I think it is not an indicator. It's an overall behavior, or it's an overall tendency, trend to incorporate more circularity in our planning and execution of investment or building or infrastructure or development of electronics. So I think I would probably try to, I know that the world will develop indicators for many more things, but I think for me the healthier approach would be to think, how can we create communities that want to leverage the 80% of what is obviously an externality in sustainable development, and then share this. And there, of course, the mechanism is interesting. I haven't talked about this today, but I think we could probably use some of the international financial system to create such mechanisms where monetary and non-monetary benefits are collected in a common space and invested into a global common. And we had this, biodiversity is a global common. The water cycle is a global common. So I think we need to think about what supports the global common and how can we amplify the positive impact in the global common.
So I find this very interesting. If I understand you correctly, we should not so much focus on the number that comes out at the end, but rather on how much we put in to get to that number and how we do that, and also changing the behavior of people and getting people involved. Is that?
I know this is I know my opinion is off the main I'm not the mainstream. I'm not representing a mainstream opinion. I know we need the indicators to, that's what we do accounting with. But if we look at, and this was on one of the first slide I showed, if we look at how fast we are with anything, it doesn't work. We don't have the right tools and cultures that let us really address the sustainability issue in the 3 dimensions of sustainable development. And those are the environmental dimension, the economic dimension, and the social dimension. And how many of the SDG indicators are really reflected within the 3 dimensions? I think most are primarily focused on 1 dimension only. And I think that's where we always run into the problem again, that we underestimate the impact of doing something good, or that we overestimate the positive externality, and in the end we end up with something that was well meant but that doesn't really help.
Yes, and on my side, I've seen also a lot of chasing after data. So we don't even have the data to measure all these things. And now we put all the effort and all the money into chasing after data and measuring this, and we're not changing the behavior and making sure that we achieve something. I think there's 2 more questions if you want to have a look at the...
Yeah, Juliane asks, to what extent do you think current wars and global crises influence the discourse on what will follow the SDGs, and how hopeful am I that any future framework will accelerate progress towards sustainable development? Yeah, the second part of this question is exactly why I have turned away. I am culpable for the water quality indicator in the sustainable development framework. So I was the person who was coordinating the IAC group for this. So I have developed it myself, because at the time I thought, yeah, we need this. We need to be tangible and measurable, and we need to show the world how progress can be made. And now I think that we should not renegotiate the SDG framework, but we should add onto the SDG framework those things that are missing. And that is a transformational implementation plan for the SDGs, which we don't have. We have a incrementalism modeling through approach to addressing the whole thing, when somewhere there's a tax incentive, or somewhere there's a good business model, or somewhere there is a philanthropist who invests $1 billion into something. But we don't have a framework for finding where the biggest levers are to become more sustainable overall. And I think I am hopeful that we can get this, because if we try to find those levers, I am pretty convinced that we can save money, or that we can get additional benefits. So it's either the one or the other. And if we can do that, people get interested. So I think at the moment we are in a too negative discourse on on the climate, on I have 4 kids myself. I'm also worried. I'm not saying climate is not a problem, or biodiversity loss is not a problem. But I think it is better to address it with a positive framing, so that, we can get people to think it's cool to do something. Because at the moment, it's not cool. At the moment, it's cool to worry about Israel, or Gaza, or Iran, or the Ukraine, or whatnot, or Yemen. I mean, there are so many wars at the moment. I think we have most conflicts now since 1949, or even longer at the moment on the planet. So that doesn't help us at the moment, but it creates within, I think, a couple of years, an additional need for a quicker way to transform how we rebuild all this trust and infrastructure and how we heal the wounds in populations. I mean, if you look at Gaza, even if the whole thing stops today and we rebuild all the infrastructure, the scars in the people's minds and souls are so deep that if we don't find a different way how to bring people together, the whole thing will start over in 5 or 10 or 15 years. And so what we have at the moment is a political caste or class that is apparently nowhere near interested in the public good or the common, and that is only engaging in personal power games. And yeah, I have no recipe for that, but I know that people can do better. And Matthias, Serena, you're muted. I can't hear you.
I wanted to ask you a follow-up question before you go to Matthias' question. Is if you think about the future and your particular your indicator, the one where you were involved in, I mean, I don't know if they're going to do another 15 or 20 years after this, after 2030. Where do you think, I mean, would it make sense to just keep the indicators as they are and move forward and then focus rather on externalities on communities? Or should a certain degree of adjustment be done to the goals and the indicators? What do you think? And maybe you can more concretely talk about your indicator, and maybe you also have some insight from what's being discussed in the UN.
Yeah. I think that under the current impression that the people have from the overall global political or geostrategic developments, and it's not only the wars, it's also the economic threat that many people feel. Groups of people feel threatened in their wealth. Other groups of people don't have enough to survive. So I think at the moment the discrepancies are growing between different groups of people. So, and also between different governments. So therefore, I don't think that something like the SDG framework could be negotiated in the next 3-4 years. I don't believe that will happen. So there's too much bad feeling in the air at the moment. So I don't think that can be done. And I therefore think it's best to, at the moment, just say, okay, well, we haven't reached the SDG aspiration that we had. Let's just keep it. And let's also think about why we haven't reached it, and let's add those transformational elements that we need in the 3 dimensions that I talked about earlier, that lets us change the course, and that leads from, at the moment we have in New York, Germany is presenting the voluntary national report this year in the UN on some of the SDGs, and the people are so concerned in our system to report that we have made progress. But the people are not concerned to think about how can we really cooperate with other people to do things in a different way. So I don't even need to point the finger at the bad guys. I think we are ourselves caught in this frenzy of reporting. And okay, then you have asked, should we keep the indicators? What if you listen to me now, I should say, no, let's abandon all the indicators. But I still think that the indicators are per se not bad if we understand them as I think they should be indicators to indicate if something is okay or not, but not as an absolute measure to if a country or a person or a company does right or wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to move to Matthias?
Yeah. So would more local initiatives help to identify the externalities? Do we need a global view, or would a local view be more effective? I think only the two work together. And that's the easy answer. But if you think about the slide, the initial slide, there, I don't think things can be decided only locally, because I don't know, then the German farmers will still want to farm corn or so, and maybe it's not the best way in a European or in a global context. So, and if you think about no tillage agriculture in Germany, I think it's below 2% or so, but we should actually only have no tillage agriculture. So I do not think that, I believe that more local involvement is good. And I think that the best is to defer decision potential to the local level. And that could also, for example, be supported by something where if there is actually a global common that creates a monetary benefit or a financial resource, then we could use this to support local developments of how the change can be made. And there is a lot of good examples. All the local renewable energy communities or cooperatives that have been popping up in the last 10 years or so across Europe, there are a lot of good examples. But I would still think that to leverage those bigger externalities, you have to go transdisciplinary. And that's the problem at the local scale, because locally farmers talk to farmers, but farmers don't talk to fishermen or to businessmen or to steel workers or so. Or I think that's more difficult at the local level. Now you're muted again.
So you kind of need that data also not at the local level, but at the global level, so that you can make the right decisions at the local level.
At least as a background, yeah. And I don't think that anything works with restrictions. I only think that it works with try to have the people understand the bigger issue and then empower them to take the right local actions.
And isn't this maybe also part of the challenge, that it takes so long for this message to get to the local level, from the offices in New York to wherever people start implementing it? And if we now change direction again, we're going to confuse everybody. I think there's a big risk in that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another good reason to keep the SDG agenda as it is until we can more confidential, until we have more confidence that we think that less people are hungry now. Or I mean, the number of people that go hungry has risen in the past 3-4 years. So despite all the good progress that we have made.
Well, maybe that goes back to Juliana's comment that, I mean, you can work on a trajectory, but if there's something like a war, then it just destroys everything. I mean, it
pretty
kind
much.
of, puts a bomb in the room, I guess, more ways than one. Are there any other questions from the audience? I think we've done all of them. Samanthi, do you still have a question? Otherwise,
no open questions, always good. Then I've either completely confused everybody or it's very clear.
or given us lots of food for thought.
Yeah, I don't have a recipe for what I believe needs to be done, but I think that some steps are possible that we could support also with FLORES. And yeah, for me, it's this changing the attitude from trying to improve one single thing towards trying to think how can we create cooperative frameworks or communities or groups of people that connect to do something in a new way. And there will also be failure in it. That's also okay for me. That's the de-risking part. So we need to be able to say, okay, well, let's try something new, and only if we are willing to do so, I think we can really spark innovative, transformative solutions. And I don't think they come with government spending or this or this law. I don't think that creates transformation.
Yeah, which brings us back to Matthias's comment about the local people and local actors. Okay, with that then, I would like to thank you for your time and give us a glimpse into this. It's always interesting to hear. We are at the receiving end of all these indicators, so it's really interesting to see where they all come from and how also over time perceptions about them change as one learns. I think
the water quality indicator is such a nice example, because and now everybody wants to leave. I will only do these 2 minutes. When the indicator was developed, my own environment ministry told me, hey, look, only 5 physical parameters, that's not enough. We want biology, we want the health of the habitat, we want organic substances, micropollutants, whatnot. And some other country representative said, look, we can't agree to that because we are not able to measure any of this stuff. And then we had a long discussion about because it's not so new that wetlands are so important. It's now en vogue, it's big in the media, but we knew that also 15 years ago, and we wanted to maybe include something on wetland health or wetland potential. But then a few countries said, well, look, we don't have any wetlands in our territory. We don't want an indicator that relates to wetlands, because then our indicator will always be red, because we can't improve the wetland situation. So that's the practicality about how an indicator for the SDG comes to life and looks in the end. So it's a compromise that suits everyone, and it represents an idea, but it does not mean that green lighting the indicator provides a better future for anybody.
so it's never like the perfect solution, but rather, yeah, moving forward and making.
I think we must keep the indicators as motivators for transformation.
Yes, I hear. So they have
okay.
a very, in some ways, a very philosophical kind of role to play, because they give us direction, but maybe the measurement of them is complicated. So with that, let me conclude. Thank you also for all the online participants. Thank you, Johannes, for your time. And I would also like to invite everybody to the next Nexus Seminar, which will take place on the 7th of July, when Professor Lars Kvarnhof will give us some background on his nudging investors towards sustainability. So maybe this is also interesting in terms of externalities and sustainable development goals. So I want to invite everybody to that on the 7th of July. Thank you, Johannes. And with that, I would like to conclude. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.